current state of removal operations, particularly in the residential sidewalk, is just totally unacceptable.
Calling out the city's snow clearing efforts, a frustrated mayor speaks out.
Today, questioning contracts for removal operations. Good afternoon. Toronto's mayor says she's run out of patience. This is a snapshot of our snow-clogged city after a double dose of winter storms hammered streets.
Now, more than a week later, some streets and sidewalks still aren't clear. CTV's Mike Walker joins us live, where the mayor held a news conference this morning. Mike.
Well, Nathan, Michelle, the city has said it would take up to 3 weeks to clean up after these back-to-back snowstorms dumped more than 50 centimeters. But the mayor was critical of the job done so far, saying it's not acceptable, especially on residential streets like this one that we're on. Mayor Olivia Chow is now calling on the city manager to review the winter maintenance operations as well as the contracts signed with private companies. Now,
we want to do a full review of the winter maintenance operations, including how to optimize the resources and review the contracts. Let us look at the options, including renegotiating or breaking the contracts.
Things have to change. People expect, as I said, value for their money. They want their tax dollars to work. I want tax dollars to work. And when I tell my residents you're getting a service and it's going to get you to point A, from point A to point B, I expect that to be achieved.
Now, as part of what the mayor is calling for is also to look at other options to improve winter maintenance in the city. And Mayor Chow said that could also include renegotiating the existing contract with private operators or breaking that contract. The mayor is also calling on the Auditor General to review how the city handled the back-to-back snowstorms this month. Now, this matter will be discussed at the next executive committee, and later this afternoon, we will be getting an update from the city on its snow removal operations. Reporting live, I'm Mike Walker. Back to you.
Thank you, Mike. Still to come, the final push for your vote and final pitches to become your next premier. The race for Queen's Park now just days away.
More news in a moment, but first, let's have a live look at the city this afternoon. And certainly we were talking about snow removal moments ago. We've got all the snow still covering streets, but we also have a big melt happening because it's been a few days of very mild temperatures. We are in positive territory. The air feels humid and definitely it's a bit sloppy out there. Lindsay Morrison is here with a look at the current conditions. There was a bit of a sun shower this morning.
There was, Michelle. So there's that too. There's the melting from the mild weather. And then there's also a little bit of rain being added in by Mother Nature. On our satellite and radar, if you're joining us from around Alliston, Schaumburg, Orangeville area, you might be getting a couple of wet flakes, but otherwise it has been raindrops around the GTA. It's not going to be an all-day event, but just enough that you maybe needed to use your windshield wipers out driving earlier today. It's 6 degrees once again right now in the city of Toronto. Very mild. Winds not nearly as much of a factor today as they were yesterday, although they are still coming out of the southwest. This afternoon, we've reached about our forecast daytime high for today. We are above seasonal and, of course, above freezing. But tonight, that temperature is going to slip back below zero. So that in itself could create some slippery spots with all the melting going on out there. Lots to talk about in your weather forecast. We'll get to it coming up. For now, though, Michelle, I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, Lindsay. We turn to the latest from the Ontario election campaign. Voting day is this Thursday.
And there will be a race to the finish line. Each of the main party leaders working hard to get their message out to voters. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris joins us with all the details. Siobhan.
Well, PC leader Doug Ford was able to bring the campaign back to the thing he's tried to frame this whole thing around, and that is tariffs. Doug Ford was campaigning in Ottawa the day after U.S. President Donald Trump confirmed that tariffs on Canadian goods will come into effect next week. We heard Ford talk today about the need to retaliate, hit back hard if and when those tariffs do come into place, including some new ways Ontario is looking at when it comes to electricity exports. Bonnie Crombie, the Liberal leader, was campaigning in the riding of Toronto Centre today, talking up her plan to bring mental health care under the OHIP umbrella. But really stealing the thunder is her endorsement of Mark Carney to lead the federal Liberal Party. It is thought that Crombie has been helped by improving fortunes for the federal party. Here's more of what we heard from both of those leaders.
We will pull every contract off any U.S. companies, especially we do a lot in the tech sector. They're done, they're gone. We're reviewing the cost of electricity we're sending down there. And if he puts tariffs on anything in Canada or Ontario, they're getting a tariff on their electricity.
Mark Carney is a very decisive leader, an experienced leader, and this is a moment in time, and he is the right person for this moment in time. He's a leader that can stand up to Donald Trump and speak with some authority and experience on tariffs, but he's also a leader who will get the basics right, and that's my focus here in Ontario today.
NDP leader Marit Stiles is campaigning in London this morning and then moving on to Cambridge before finally ending her day in Scarborough. Green leader Mike Schreiner is back in Parry Sound, Muskoka, a seat that the Greens are hoping to pick up from Progressive Conservatives. Reporting live from Queen's Park, I'm Siobhan Morris. Nathan and Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Siobhan. And amid the race for Queen's Park, CTV's John Musselman is standing outside there where leaders from the Grassy Narrows First Nation held a vigil with a message this morning. Tell us about it, John.
Well, that's right, Michelle. It's just wrapping up now. About 80 community members from the Grassy Narrows First Nations were here. They're calling for compensation to the community. Now, this is all related to historic mercury poisoning of the water system back in 1962 right up to 1970, causing a lot of mental health, physical health problems to the community. And it has devastated the community, as the chief said here just a few minutes ago. Now, we had a chance to talk to some of the people at the protest. They did invite Premier Ford to this event. He is campaigning in Ottawa. They were disappointed about that. They say it is still important to come down here and talk about the issues the community is dealing with and what needs to be done.
Just a little understanding of how things work in this country. Justice for Indigenous people in so-called Canada has never come at the hands of the state. Whether it's survivors of St. Anne's fighting for their stories and documents to come to light on the public record, whether it's Indigenous children stolen by child welfare fighting for a fair chance in court, or it's Grassy Narrows fighting for justice for mercury contamination on their lands and waters. Indigenous people are not a footnote in the story of Canada. We are not tragic victims. Indigenous people are the original stewards of this land. They are the current stewards of this land. Despite all of the struggles of this community that are standing before us today, they continue to advocate and fight for their land and Mother Earth.
The mercury that's in the sediment is, we get poisoned by eating the fish, and it's a neurological toxin. It affects, it's affecting me, and I feel myself deteriorating each day, and I'm 63 years old. And imagine, with Dr. Donna Mergler's report, she said the ones behind me that are 40 and under are going to be more poisoned than me because they're poisoned in utero, in the womb.
And that was Judy De Silva. She told us that she suffered from mercury poisoning in 1963 from eating fish in the community. Again, the vigil was held here. They are calling for full compensation for all members of the Grassy Narrows First Nation. Reporting live, I'm John Musselman. I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, John. Meantime, Ontario Place for All is asking for a police investigation into the government's plan to transform the site. It says the call for development wasn't fair, accountable, or transparent, and the province did not follow Ontario's realty directive. The group says the process breached real estate law and ethical standards as government officials met with some bidders several times before, during, and after the bidding process. Advocates want police to step in to ensure the Ford government is held accountable.
A man has pleaded guilty to first-degree murder in a random attack on the TTC more than 2 years ago. 55-year-old Nang Jia Jin also pleaded guilty to attempted murder in the attack on a subway train near High Park Station in December of 2022. 31-year-old Vanessa Kerpuska was killed. Her death, along with other high-profile incidents on the TTC in the months prior, prompted the transit agency to introduce new safety measures. A second woman survived the stabbing attack.
No injuries to report after shots were fired in Rexdale overnight. Police were called to Jamestown Crescent and John Garland Boulevard around 1:20 a.m. for reports of a shooting. While no injuries were reported, police did find property that had been damaged by gunfire. Anyone with information is asked to contact police.
And a man's in hospital after a fire in the East End. Firefighters were called to a high-rise on Gordon Ridge Place near Danforth in Midland around 9:45 last night. Heavy smoke and flames could be seen coming from a unit on the 9th floor. The victim was assessed at the scene and taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. The cause of the fire remains under investigation.
And a roof has collapsed in Aurelia's downtown core. According to the chief, it happened at a unit on West Street North around 6:30 yesterday evening. It's not clear what caused the collapse, but the heavy snowfall seen in recent weeks is being investigated as a possibility here. The chief says there's no tenant in the unit, so it was vacant at the time. No injuries were reported.
The four candidates vying to replace Justin Trudeau as Liberal leader and Prime Minister squared off in a French language debate last night. And U.S. President Donald Trump was a major focus of discussion.
He wants to turn Canada into the 51st state, and it's no joke. That is why he is supporting Vladimir Putin's criminal attempt to redraw Ukraine's borders.
In the past, he wanted our markets. Now he wants our country. So we have to focus on the things that we control. We can't control President Trump, but we can be a master in our own house. We have to strengthen our economy.
I propose a new economic bloc that would gather Canada, United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand. Why? Because we share the same kind of government. We share the same kinds of values, the same language. Well, of course, the English language as a common language. And it means that we can work together closely.
We do need to reinforce our economy, but we need to stand up for the Canadian economy faced with Donald Trump. And what I'm very proud to see is how Canadians throughout the country are standing up against Donald Trump's threats.
The leadership hopefuls also discussed affordability, housing, health care, and climate action during the 2-hour event. They'll return to the stage in Montreal tonight for an English language debate. This will be their last opportunity to confront each other in person before the March 9th leadership vote. Liberal Party members can start casting advance ballots tomorrow. And tonight, CTV News Channel will have special coverage of the English language leadership debate, starting with a special edition of Power Play, hosted by Vashi Kapelos at 7 p.m. Eastern, with the debate beginning at 8 p.m.
The first set of U.S. tariffs against Canada will take effect 1 week from today. Donald Trump made that clear yesterday.
We're on time with the tariffs, and it seems like that's moving along very rapidly. We've been mistreated very badly by many countries, not just Canada and Mexico. We've been taken advantage of. We were led by, in some cases, fools.
The U.S. president has said other countries charge unfair import taxes at the expense of domestic manufacturing and jobs. Next Tuesday, we will face 25% duties on Canadian goods and a 10% levy on energy products. It ends this month-long pause on the planned U.S. import taxes. Trump also says reciprocal tariffs are on schedule to begin as soon as April.
The trade dispute and Trump's comments have led some to accuse tech giant Google of attacking Canadian sovereignty with the questionable naming of some provincial parks. CTV's Kathy Lee explains.
Breathtaking vistas with unique charm and allure. The country's provincial parks treasured by Canadians. So when some of them were labeled as state parks on Google Maps, many were outraged.
Definitely very shocking and surprised.
I was mortified.
That is not okay to me.
Canadian Google Maps users are reporting errors to the tech giant, marking the parks as having incorrect designations and suggesting edits to the category.
I went to suggest an edit and then had noticed provincial park was completely removed as a category on Google Maps.
The latest comes after the company changed the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America after President Donald Trump's executive order. The search engine also removed certain events and designations from its calendar, like Black History Month and Pride, though Google maintains that decision was logistical. In a statement, the tech giant says it hasn't made any changes to the way it labels parks in Canada, saying the vast majority of parks have had their existing labels for several years and that they'll be updated to avoid avoid confusion.
I don't buy that. It's been provincial for as long as I remember it to be.
One expert says Trump wanting to make Canada the 51st state is contributing to the recent strong nationalism in the country.
It is creating the sensitivity that anything that might have existed in the past that Canadians really didn't take very seriously, they now feel more offended by.
I am on edge, as I don't want to be part of the United States. I am a Canadian.
And as Canadians, many feel Trump's threats or a designation change on Google Maps are an attack on their identity. Kathy Lee, CTV News, Calgary.
The new concerns about what staring at screens could do to your child's eyesight.
A study finds every hour of screen time for kids raises their chance of nearsightedness. Let's bring in CTV's Scott Hurst with the details. Scott, modern-day kids, they're on screens all the time. The thought that this could be doing damage is definitely troubling. Help us understand the scope of this study and what it found.
Michelle, of course, you nailed it right there. You have young kids. I have even younger kids. We all know how much time kids, teenagers are spending on their devices, their digital devices, smartphones, tablets, gaming consoles, computers. It's really rewriting the script here. And new research is highlighting the risk it can pose to younger eyes, focusing on myopia, also known as nearsightedness or short-sightedness. According to the Canadian Association of Optometrists, myopia is a common visual condition that currently affects about 30% of the population, but by 2050, it's expected to increase to about 50% of the world's population. Along with the overall rise, myopia is occurring in earlier ages, starting as young as 6 and 7 years old and progressing at a more rapid rate than previous generations. Now, according to this study, digital screen time was associated with increased odds of developing myopia, noting a daily 1-hour increment was associated with about 21% higher odds of myopia, with a notable rise in risk between 1 and 4 hours of exposure. Now, the underlying causes of myopia is believed to be a combination of genetics and environmental factors, but what this research really focuses on and points out is that these environmental factors, the study says, are increasingly affecting younger and younger people, Michelle.
Yeah, it's interesting that the research could not prove that the screen time itself caused myopia, but certainly there's a troubling association. And I guess the question is, what can we do about it? Because screens are built into so much of what we do every day.
Yes, certainly appears to be more and more of a contributing factor here. I guess specifically, and this, as you said and pointed out, that it's becoming more and more common with the younger generation, but limiting screen time is one of the recommendations here. Of course, that might be easier said than done and much harder to do, but according to the study, the association between screen time and increasing the risk remained kind of insignificant for about 1 hour per day, suggesting a potential safety threshold here. And the study points out that these findings could be beneficial and helpful for educational strategies, how and how long devices may be used in school settings, and also helping to set public health policies to limit the risk. Of course, as you mentioned, we know full well how hard it is to potentially pry these devices out of teens and younger kids, but another noticeable way to decrease the risk is outside time and exposure to natural light. So that's important as well to limit the risk factor here, Michelle.
That's how we used to play back in the good old days.
Just go outside.
Yeah, when all the kid shows ended but noon, right? CTV's Scott Hurst, live for us in the CTV National Newsroom. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
In Rome, Pope Francis is spending his 12th day in hospital as he receives treatment for double pneumonia. The pontiff remains in critical condition, but the Vatican says he rested well all night. He's eating normally and moving around. He met with senior colleagues in hospital to discuss work issues. Yesterday, officials said the Pope has shown a slight improvement. Another medical update is expected later today.
A private lunar lander has captured some spectacular new close-ups of the moon. The images include a view of the moon's far side, an area that is not visible from here on Earth. It was taken after the lander transitioned to a lower orbit, around 120 kilometers above the surface. The craft was launched by the Texas-based company Firefly Aerospace on February 8th and has been sharing dazzling visuals of our celestial neighbor since 5 days after that.
Meanwhile, there is a 1.7% chance an asteroid could hit the moon in 2032, but it appears we are in the clear. After 2 months of observation, the European Space Agency said there is now a 0.001% chance of the space rock hitting Earth. And NASA says it's even lower than that. At one point, the odds of a strike in 2032 were as high as about 3%. The asteroid is about 130 feet to 300 feet across and swings our way every 4 years.
Here on Earth, a California-based startup is showcasing a flying car prototype. Aleph Aeronautics has been working on the vehicle for more than 3 years. Look at it go. It has shown the prototype at various car shows around the world, but always on the ground. But in this recent test, the ultralight flew for about 40 seconds there. The company hopes to begin production next year with a price tag of around $300,000. It says there are already more than 3,000 pre-orders.
I'm Jessica Smith, and we are live here at the Bata Shoe Museum, and we're asking the question, can shoes be art? Can art be shoes? We're here in one of their newer exhibits that have shoes from artists around the world, even some from right here in Canada. Coming up after the break, we'll have an interview talking about this particular exhibit and all the fantastic shoes included that you can come and check out. All those details are coming up after the break.
Well, you might have considered a different type of shoe this morning as you were heading out the door. We're getting a taste of spring again today, but let's talk about yesterday's daytime highs. It was a mild Monday. Hamilton, the big winner at almost 10 degrees, 9.4. Downtown Toronto, we were at 8.5 degrees yesterday. 7.2 at Pearson Airport. Very mild right across the southern parts of our province. But tonight, it is worth mentioning that we are expecting to fall below freezing to around -3 degrees. So all that melting that's happening out there, the puddles that are forming, they could become a little bit slippery as we head into tomorrow morning. Not only that, but we've got a round of active weather that looks like it's going to impact us Wednesday night and into Thursday. We'll tell you what type of precipitation is looking likely at this point. After this, you're watching CTV News at noon. We'll be right back.
All right, I went for a walk this morning. I saw somebody wearing shorts and flip-flops, believe it or not. But it's all relative. It is nice getting this milder weather.
Can I one-up you?
Yeah,
because I saw a man running shirtless.
Oh.
He was giving her. So obviously, if you're maybe used to running in the winter and it's so cold, people would have been pretty hot today. I mean, it was fun to tell the kids they didn't need neck warmers today. They were so grateful.
That is fun. And here I was sweating it out in my winter jacket. I should have thought differently because it's true. It is very mild out there. It's a refreshing change compared to what we've experienced through much of January and, of course, much of the month of February now, which is coming to an end on a very mild note. As we make our way through the next couple of days, we're going to remain above freezing when it comes to those daytime highs, but we're also getting a little bit of active weather, maybe just in time to welcome the month of March in like a lion. Weather is brought to you by the Presler Law Firm Injury Lawyers. You don't pay unless they win. Of course, there are upsides to the mild weather, but I want to take you to Ottawa right now, where the Rideau Canal Skateway was actually closed to skaters yesterday because it's been so mild. Officials there are confident that the skateway is going to reopen before this winter is done. It is still open to pedestrians, worth mentioning, just not to skaters. And they believe that this is the best way in order to maintain the conditions at this point. But yes, just a heads up in case you're planning on doing any traveling to the nation's capital. Don't want you to be disappointed if you were hoping to lace up your skates this week. Let's talk about temperatures from coast to coast because we're not the only ones feeling mild this week. It is warm, 7 degrees right now in Halifax, Nova Scotia. It is, of course, warm in Vancouver, British Columbia. That's not totally abnormal for this time of year. And it has been significantly warmer across the Canadian prairies. We are getting some Pacific moisture here in Ontario, and that has led to our temperatures, not just in the south, but in northern parts of the province being warmer than normal too. Hey, look at that. Winds are now at 8 degrees. So once again, it is another mild day. It looks as though we've likely reached our forecast daytime high here in Toronto. We were calling for about 6 degrees. We're already there. Normal temperature this time of year is about 2. So we're warmer than that. And if you're heading out for an evening stroll tonight, you can expect it to be mostly dry. It's tomorrow night that we're going to be watching for the potential for some wet snow or some rain. We'll show you that on the forecast radar in just a moment. But daytime temperatures tomorrow still above freezing, still above seasonal in many cases. About 2 degrees in Aurora, 3 in Burlington. And if you're joining us from Huntsville, 2 degrees is your forecast daytime high. Again, maybe a few flurries in some areas a little earlier in the day, but it's tomorrow night that the main event is going to arrive. Speaking of a few flurries and a few raindrops, here's our current satellite and radar, a little more active than we thought it might be this morning. It is pulling away this disturbance, but again, we're waiting for the next one to move in. And this one does have potential to bring us, it's looking at this point like a little more in the way of snow this time around. Likely to be wet snow, so be mindful of that. Daytime tomorrow pretty dry. Here's about 8 p.m. tomorrow, just a heads up that west end of the GTA going to be getting into some of that activity. And then it looks like we'll get a couple of rounds into Thursday. So Thursday is a little bit unsettled. It is, of course, Election Day. I encourage you not to be deterred, if possible, by the weather. Get out and vote if you can. And then your 7-day forecast, the rest of it looks like this. Once that system is finished with us on Thursday, we will have some colder air behind it moving in for Friday. So you'll notice it at night. The weekend, yeah, colder air for sure, especially Sunday. Lots of sunshine, but a daytime high of only -4. That's your look at the weather for now. Nathan, over to you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Well, if you love shoes, you know footwear can be an art form.
That's certainly the belief at Toronto's Bata Shoe Museum, which is looking ahead to a milestone anniversary with some very special programming. And with the details, we're joined by CTV's Jessica Smith, who always puts her best foot forward. Jess, tell us what's happening there.
Listen, if you love shoes, and I know a lot of people do, Michelle and Nathan, this is the place you want to be. Not only because it is the Bata Shoe Museum, but they have a really cool exhibit on right now. I'm joined by Elizabeth Semmelhack, and we're talking about shoes, and you are an expert on shoes. I've heard you've written a few books, but talk to me about artwear, where we're standing right now. If you love sneakers, if you love running shoes, this is the place to be, but it's also about the artistic connection.
It is, and so this exhibition specifically is asking, why are artists that you see in museums now doing so many sneaker collabs? And a question I'm posing is, are sneaker collabs replacing artist prints as a way of having something by a famous artist at a more accessible price point, basically?
And it is really cool. We'll kind of walk through the exhibit a little bit. There's so much to see, and there's ones that have been painted on. We've got kind of more artistic expressions of shoes. But why is this something that you wanted to bring to the museum here and bring to, you know, the city of Toronto, to the GTA, to Ontario? Because I know a lot of sneakerheads out there enjoy their running shoes.
Well, I think that it's interesting to think of sneakers as a canvas. Because first of all, it's not really a blank canvas, right? If you choose to work on a Converse All-Star, it's saying one thing. If you choose to work on an Air Jordan 1, it's saying another thing. So what sneakers are artists choosing to work on, and what are they doing with them? And then more importantly, why do we want to actually embody these? Why do we want to put them on ourselves? And so it has to do with innovation. You know, this whole thing was started by teen girls in the 1950s because sneakers were cheap enough and the ballpoint pen had been invented. And so they started to decorate their sneakers. The invention of spray paint, which led to graffiti, was created a set of artists that were the first ones that most brands began to work with. So it also links to these other artistic moments and larger cultural constructs. So, you know, it's interesting. We had a big KAWS exhibition at the AGO, and here KAWS was able to lend a bunch of his rarest pieces. And so you can see that it's not just sneakers, it's also complete outfits. And each artist, as they work on their sneakers, is also creating a unique expression.
Then it really is so unique because you think about how much sneaker culture has been incorporated into everyday life when it comes to corporate culture and just regular everyday wear. What's the reaction been from people so far? I mean, I personally am a sneaker lover, but I feel like it's one of those things where this really, truly is art.
Yeah, I think that it really is art. I mean, one of the rules, though, that I had for this exhibition was that every single piece in here had to be wearable. So it's not an exhibition that looks at paintings of sneakers or sculptures of sneakers. It looks at sneakers themselves transformed by famous artists into something that we can access. And so I think there's a lot of reasons why we're interested in this. But I think that binary of high art and low art is being challenged through collaborations like this.
And you guys have some really exciting things coming up for a very big anniversary. Can you tell me a little bit about that, a little tease?
Yes, okay, so we're having our 30th anniversary, and starting May 7th, we have a new exhibition out on the history of cowboy boots. And so It's a really interesting topic, particularly in this day and age, but it will go back and tell the history of who early cowboys really were, how long it took for the cowboy boot as we recognize it to actually evolve. It will talk about the myth-making associated with the cowboy and the cowboy boot, and then it ends by looking at where we are now, who's interacting with this mythology, who's interested in reclaiming that history, and the boots are incredible.
Listen, those boots are made for walking. Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much. And don't forget, you can come down on Sundays. It is free to come into the Bata Shoe Museum, which is on Sundays. On Sundays, a bonus. So when I send things back to studio, I'm going to keep walking around and looking at shoes and get ready to, do my line dance when the cowboy boots come into town.
Jess is in her happy place. Thank you. Still to come, it seems like so many people are sick right now. Have you noticed? What health experts say is behind this year's severe flu season and when it could peak.
Cases of the flu are spiking across Canada, leading to one of the worst flu seasons we've seen in years.
Prompting caution from doctors. CTV's Andrew Johnson pinpoints what's behind the surge in severe cases.
It's a flu season that started late and a week away from March still hasn't peaked.
There's been a lot of influenza cases across the country and significant hospitalizations associated with that as well.
The latest Canadian Flu Watch report shows the percentage of positive influenza tests right now is the highest recorded in 5 years. Parts of British Columbia, Alberta, Ontario, and Quebec are seeing the biggest jumps. And more flu means more people are feeling sick enough to visit their doctor or head to the emergency room.
We are seeing a lot in the hospital. It is the time in the season that we would expect to see a lot of influenza, and the tests are positive, and I think mixed with a fewer number of people who've actually got the vaccine this year. I think that's why we're seeing a lot of worse disease.
New data from BC bears that out. So far this season, 25% of the eligible population is vaccinated. Last year, at this time, the number was more than 28%. That's close to 200,000 people who may be more likely to get very sick.
You know, in 2025, we've had 5 years of vaccine for a variety of reasons, whether it's COVID or RSV or influenza. And I think people are a little bit tired of it. But of course, the disappointing thing is that despite us being tired of it, doesn't mean that the virus is going to give us a break.
Experts say confidence in the public health system has been eroded and governments need to increase access.
That takes resources, but it really means bringing vaccines to the people rather than bringing people to the vaccine.
This year's delayed flu season is expected to outlast winter, potentially dragging on into April. Andrew Johnson, CTV News, Vancouver.
A new study suggests ultra-processed foods are to blame for more than a third of heart disease and stroke deaths in Canada. Researchers found 38% of deaths from heart disease and stroke can be attributed to consuming ultra-processed foods. The category includes things like soft drinks, candy, and sweetened cereals. Scientists also found that 37% of new cases of heart disease and stroke were also tied to those products. Researchers say ultra-processed foods make up almost half of Canadians' daily energy intake. The Toronto Film Critics Association handed out its annual awards last night, revealing their favorites from here and across the globe.
And the stars were out walking the red carpet at the King Eddie Hotel. CTV's Andrea Case was there.
The members of the Toronto Film Critics Association watched dozens of films in 2024. They chose Nickel Boys as the best film of the year. Written and directed by Ramel Ross, it's the story of two young men in a notorious Florida reformatory school. The film is also nominated in the Best Adapted Screenplay category at Sunday's Academy Awards. Johanna Schneller is the president of the TFCA, and she says with tariffs looming and a chill coming from the U.S., she says our stories are needed more than ever.
We're in such danger being next to the States, being run over by this monolith, and there's this presumption that we're all North American, we're all the same, but that's not true. There's a panoply of voices, a diversity of voices, and I feel like the best movies are the most specific movies. And so to be able to tell movies that are specifically Canadian, I think is really exciting.
Surprisingly, actor Emily Hampshire is open to what a critic has to say, good or bad.
I have such respect for a good critic, and a good bad review is kind of, to me, great. A, because I think you can learn from it.
Actor Sarah Gadden appreciates the work of the critic in a city which loves film.
I love the critics of Toronto. We're an incredible city that loves movies. We are tastemakers here. I feel like the critics in Toronto often define some of the greatest movies of the year, and I'm just happy to be celebrating with them tonight.
Real World Film Festival founder and executive producer Tanya Williams was the recipient of the 2024 Luminary Award for her outstanding contributions to film.
I don't like to project, the horribleness of what might happen. I also want to focus on and think about what positive things could we come out of this. I mean, it might strengthen our Canadian, content. We might not become so reliant on the U.S. side. We don't know. So let's all stay hopeful that we should be able. We're a big country. We got a bunch of people. We've got our own money. We should be able to make stuff happen for ourselves.
Andrea Case, CTV News.
And speaking of Canadian content, Drake is unseating his rap rival Kendrick Lamar to take the top spot on the Billboard 200 chart.
City is pretty when it's dead, just like a flower. What colors the CN Towers? Blue now.
A joint album from Drake and fellow Canadian artist Party Next Door called Some Sexy Songs for You is on top of the charts. It is the 14th #1 for Drake, and now he ties that record with Jay-Z and Taylor Swift.
Tributes continue to pour in for Roberta Flack, who died at the age of 88. CTV's John Venevali-Rao has more on how one of the defining voices of a generation is being remembered.
Roberta Flack once said this was a song she instantly knew was magic. Killing me softly with this song. And combined with her soulful voice, it became part of the soundtrack of the 70s. I feel like making love. An artist who was also a Grammy trailblazer.
In fact, she was the first person and the first artist to win back-to-back Grammy Awards for Record of the Year.
Reacting to the news of her death, Jennifer Hudson calling Flack one of the greatest soul singers of all time. Born in North Carolina, Flack played her first piano at age 9. Initially, her goal was to be a concert pianist, but turned to singing, releasing her debut album in 1969 and struggling to get attention. That is, until Clint Eastwood asked to use one of her songs in a movie. It pushed the song to #1 on the Billboard chart. Killing me softly with it. Then came that other big hit. The song landed in the Rolling Stones top 500 songs of all time, inspiring musicians like Alicia Keys and the Fugees to years later reimagine it.
When I recorded Killing Me Softly in 1972, I had the same kind of goosebumps. When I sang it, performed it, recorded it, thought about it, as I do now when I hear the Fugees sing it. Tonight, I celebrate my love.
Her music spans 6 decades, but then in 2022, she announced she had ALS and could no longer sing. In a statement her publicist wrote, she died peacefully surrounded by her family. An artist whose unmistakable voice will endure. John Venevali-Rao, CTV News, Toronto.
And still to come on CTV News at noon, a cautionary tale if you're planning any major financial transactions. A man was trying to transfer $750,000 to buy GICs when he got scammed. Pat Foran has his story after this short break. Criminals are constantly trying to find new ways to steal our money, and now there's another online scam you should be aware of.
Scammers are creating look-alike websites that will pop up in a Google search, hoping you'll give up your personal information. CTV's Pat Foran has one victim's warning for others.
You thought you were on the real PC Financial website.
Of course I did.
82-year-old Walter Yamka of Oakville says last fall he had $750,000 in GICs with CIBC. He was searching for a better interest rate and typed best GIC rates into the Google search engine. He clicked on a website that appeared to be PC Financial's and called their phone number.
I said, I can come up with $750,000. He said, oh, we'll give you 6.5% on a GIC.
Yamka received documents with PC Financial letterhead and went to his bank and asked them to transfer the money, but the website was a fake and he was scammed out of $750,000.
They sent me a graph showing that in 1 year I was going to come up with $798,000. I've got zero, nothing.
Yamka says his bank should have known it was a scam, as the money was transferred to a bank account not associated with PC Financial.
The bank should confirm the receivers that they're legitimate.
PC Financial has a warning on its website about the GIC scam and told CTV News, PC Financial does not promote or sell GICs in person, over the phone, or through email. CIBC called it a very unfortunate situation and said, our team is trained to ask questions when a client is performing a large transaction, which we did in this case. If a client authorizes a transaction, it would be processed as per their request.
These scams are becoming that much more sophisticated.
Cybersecurity experts say criminals are able to create websites and documents that are almost indistinguishable from the real thing.
I think there is a responsibility on financial institutions to make sure that the money is being transferred to a legitimate account.
Yamka says losing so much money has been disastrous for his finances.
$750,000. You know how long I'd have to work to make that money?
Pat Foran, CTV News.
And we have breaking news from Atlantic Canada this afternoon. The Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador is stepping down after 5 years on the job. Andrew Furey indicating his decision is related to spending more time with his family. You'll remember he was part of that contingent of 13 premiers who, along with Doug Ford, went to Washington to fight the tariffs. The 49-year-old says he's going to return to work as a surgeon. Furey made the announcement during an address to the province moments ago.
In sports, the Leafs will try for a third straight win as they continue their road trip tonight in Boston.
You have to score. Now a chance in front of Robertson scores!
Nick Robertson scored twice on Sunday to lead Toronto to a 5-2 victory in Chicago. The Leafs lead the Atlantic Division with 72 points, while the Bruins are a point out of the second wildcard spot. Puck drop tonight is just after 7.
And right back comes Haley Skamura. Stops up, shoots, pass save, rebound, centering pass, they score!
The Toronto Scepters will go for a 7th straight win tonight in Montreal. The Scepters' last loss was against the Victoire on January 30th, while their last loss in regulation was January 22nd. Toronto is just 2 points behind Montreal for top spot now in the PWHL. The game gets underway tonight at 7.
Redirects RJ.
And the Raptors are also in action. They'll try and close out their homestand tonight with a win against the Celtics. The Raptors crushed the Suns on Sunday, making 23-pointers in the 127-109 victory. Tip-off is just after 7. And to baseball, and a future Hall of Famer will take the mound today for the first time as a Blue Jay. Max Scherzer gets the ball this afternoon as Toronto hosts the Cardinals. The 3-time Cy Young Award winner signed a 1-year, $15.5 million contract. Scherzer has won a World Series is an 8-time All-Star. He joins fellow veterans Kevin Gausman, Chris Bassett, and Jose Barrios in the starting rotation.
Coming up, it wasn't lounging around. How a cat spent 3 weeks stuck in a sofa. A family feline forgotten during a cross-country move. The details after the break.
Finally today, talk about an incredible journey and an unusual one at that.
A cat has survived a few of her 9 lives after being stuck for 3 weeks in a sofa, of all places, during a family's move from Washington to Colorado.
3 weeks and 1,150 miles of road. What? This is crazy. This has been 3 weeks. I rushed in there, pulled out the hide-a-bed, and I could see that there was a small little hole into the armrest.
Sunny Lou got stuck in that hole and had been trapped in the couch without food or water, although there must have been a little crumbs in there or something. The furniture was in a storage unit before being brought to the family's new home. That's when the cat was found weak and emaciated, but alive. Vets checked her out and say the kitty is doing fine.
Firefighters in Spain recently found themselves performing a high-level rescue thanks to a mischievous goat. It got stuck in a precarious position on a 5th-floor window ledge in Madrid. The vacant apartment so it's not clear how it got there. Now, crews used carrots to try to lure the goat inside, and it worked. He took the bait and was taken to the city's emergency vet service. Imagine that. A lot of questions there.
Absolutely. Well, not so many questions when it comes to the forecast overnight tonight. We are slipping below freezing, but still staying warmer than normal. -3 is what we can expect. Here's a look at your overnight at a glance. As for tomorrow, daytime high still mild at 3 degrees, but not as mild as we've been the last day or so here. And we have some active weather on the way. This is going to impact us starting tomorrow night and then really on and off throughout the day on Thursday. Colder air is going to filter in behind that system for Friday, for Saturday, and for Sunday. Looks like it could be a little unsettled Saturday, too. Nathan and Michelle.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay. And that is CTV News at noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Lindsay Morrison and all of us, you have a pleasant afternoon. I'm Michelle Dubé.
And I'm Nathan Downer. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6.